Welcome to Brands on Tap, the podcast where we discuss all things brand related.
So whether you're a business owner, industry expert, or simply interested, this podcast is for you.
Hi guys, welcome back to this week's podcast. This week we're talking all things photography and videography, why they matter in your business, where they're at now compared to where they were, say, 10, 20 years ago, or even earlier than that, and why they're important in today's world. Obviously, we live in largely a swipe scroll world now where everyone's got devices on them. They've got phones in their pocket, tablets around them, social media on tap. So whatever you're doing, you're always seeing imagery, you're always seeing video, you're very immersed in that. So yeah, this podcast really just a discussion of the various elements of photography and videography in today's world, how they affect your brand, how they affect your business, and some of the things to look out for. And we're also going to be touching on AI and AI imagery in video as well.
Yep. One of the reasons why video and photography is really important is because 90% of the information that goes into our noggins is visual information.
Yes.
So, clients ask us, why do we, place a lot of emphasis on photography and video? It is purely that, really. That the more you can put visual content out there, then your target audience is going to absorb that and hopefully remember your brand.
Wow, yeah, all the facts today, throwing out all the stats. And I think you looked up that 31% of brands have a lot more impact when they've got a really strong visual storytelling element to them. So that's using either imagery or video. Apologies for the background noise. It sounds like we're in a factory today. The dishwasher's running. So that impact of imagery and video being used strongly in your branding and correctly in your branding overall has that strong impression that the trust and the reliance on your brand is going to be much stronger than just purely text-based or poor imagery or stock imagery.
Yeah, so I mean, we're big advocates of creating visual content that's engaging, and the more video content that you can add into your feed, even if it's about dishwashers, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if you can hear it, but
prolific today.
Can. This is a working pub, so sometimes it is a pain with doors slamming and dogs barking and things. But we try and create engaging content for our clients, and we cannot put as much emphasis on photography and video compared to anything else. It is just so important to aid your brand identity.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think, like we touched on in the past, things like stock imagery can be quite harmful to your business because obviously you haven't gone through those processes of assessing what makes you unique, how do you tell your story to your audience correctly. The trouble with stock imagery, obviously, it can come across quite generic. The people and the subjects in it can be shared by other brands and other businesses. Yeah. And like we said before, people buy from people, and that trust element of it is key in video and imagery more today than ever, with the whole reliance on people generating content themselves and AI exactly and imagery. I think people are very skeptical now. So what you maybe could have got away with a few decades ago, maybe even 10 years ago, I think today people are very cautious about what they're looking at and what they see. And obviously using things like stock imagery in your brand collateral can be very detrimental to that overall image and impact that you tell somebody about. And I think also it's that risk of, which we'll go into a bit more later, but the risk of what that does to your brand image in terms of trust. So you're basically saying to somebody, this is who we are, this is us transparently, like a salesperson would. If they met somebody, they would go in and say, this is who we are, this is what we're about, and this is what we want to offer you. That's a very transparent sales pitch for somebody to understand and digest. Okay, understand where you're at, what your brand does, what your business does, and the value to me. Then they make a decision whether they want to go ahead or not. But with us, obviously, we use that imagery to try and communicate that for the brand all the time. Yeah. So across all the media, all the time, those images are always trying to say something about your brand, even if that's selling or building trust or promoting your service. They are doing one of those things all the time.
Yeah.
And I think what people forget is the detriment, like you've brought up in previous podcasts, about not being willing to invest a bit of money and time into the photography, into the videography, to basically have that collateral that they can use for a long period of time going forward, but also that builds trust, continues to build trust, and reflects them as a business uniquely.
Yeah.
And I think when you go down and cut corners, it's not just the cost right now to you. It's not just that £5,000, £10,000 that you might spend on a video shoot and a massive photography shoot that would do you for 5-10 years plus. It's the here and now of, well, we can save some money and get some stock imagery done, or we can use the stock video, or we can get AI to generate something. It's not the fact that it won't fulfill the purpose, it's what effect it has on the long-term relationship between your brand and who's looking at it and who's engaging with it. And I think it's that also trying to cut through the noise, isn't it, today? In today's world, we talked about the swipe scroll world. There's so much noise on social media, there's so much stock imagery, there's so much AI imagery. How does your brand cut through? And I think it still harks back to the classic concepts you were discussing in other podcasts about having that foundation of what you're trying to shoot, how are you going to shoot it, where can we get it done professionally, and using that personal photographer that's got that eye for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's authenticity, isn't it? I mean, you're trying
100%.
to build trust with your target audience. And yeah, like you say, the best way to do that is to have authentic photography and videography.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you touched on like the cost element as well. I think there's like sometimes a misconception that, we sometimes get it with some clients, especially new clients, they definitely see it as a cost. And we say that it is an investment because, that content can last you for years. And the way we structure, say, a photo shoot or a video shoot, or both sometimes, that we structure it in such a way that we know that we're, going to be producing content for that client for years to come, not just sometimes for an initial campaign.
No.
And most campaigns that we work on are generally over, well, minimum probably 3 months, but sometimes over a period of 12 months. We'll make sure that in amongst that content, so it might be a promotional piece, let's say, especially on the video, which we'll come on to a bit later, but we'll structure it in such a way where, we're getting a lot of content on that. Well, if it's a video shoot, it might be 2 or 3 days. A photography shoot might only be a day, 2 days. So we're talking about, an investment for photography of, say, £800-900 a day, so it's 1,800 quid over a couple of days for getting 2-3 years worth of content.
100%.
Now that should be seen as an investment, because that content will be used not just on that initial piece that you're thinking about.
Nope.
Say might be a social post or whatever it might be. It can be used across your website, social posts, pre-roll videos, out of home stuff, so billboards and digital billboards and the like. It can be used anywhere and everywhere for
100%.
years to come, and it's unique to you.
Yeah.
That's the fundamental thing. It's unique to you, because we've seen it with stock imagery.
Yeah.
We work in numerous different sectors, but one of which we work in is in fostering.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see images, placed on a website, let's say, or on a social post. I think I've seen that image before. And then you look at another competitor, fostering agency, and they're using the same image. And then you look at another one, same image.
Yeah. All the impact's
so
gone.
It's not unique to you. And what does that say about your brand? It says that you're not authentic.
Yeah.
You're not willing to invest in your own collateral.
Absolutely.
And I think it paints a bad picture of your brand.
I agree. That's a really strong fundamental message, I think, throughout the whole podcast is no matter what medium you're using to generate imagery, no matter what source you're getting the imagery from, like a lot of the things we preach and practice in design, creativity, branding, everything else, the fundamentals still stand. And that, like you said, that is what picture is that painting of that brand. And I think if people are seeing that everywhere else, like you say, they're thinking, well, they don't see the importance in trying to portray to me the transparency of what they're about. They're willing to just mask it with a stock image or use a stock image to fill a gap.
Yeah.
But it's not telling a story. And I think that's what you've harked on about before with photographers and photo shoots, is the fact that they aren't just taking photos, they are telling a story at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think brands need to be telling stories more today than they ever were, because there's so many brands out there that are doing the same thing using the same processes. Unless you're actually showing somebody what makes yours unique with your photography, with your imagery. Wow, that's crazy. How quiet
The
that is.
dishwasher's gone off. Yay!
Oh, I can hear again and think. Yeah, unless you can sort of see the value in that, which we try and convey to every client, then I think it's easy to be lost in just accepting this is all right, this is acceptable, this is okay, and just keeping that momentum up, but actually not really realizing the effect that's having on people that are looking at it and engaging it. And like you say, with the photography, the irony was, on that point, I actually noticed, I was watching a travel program the other day which was showing Thailand and saying how good Thailand was, and Japan and various other Asian cultures.
Yeah, I've not been to Japan, but Thailand is pretty special.
Yeah, somewhere I definitely want to go. And I thought I recognised those women and I recognised that person, and it happens to be somebody that was in one of our fostering campaigns.
Okay.
And I thought, blimey, that's completely disconnected from what we've used them for, but it just really communicates how broad stock imagery can be across different sectors, different uses, and the impact that can have. Okay, I'm probably far more biased than the average watcher of that. 90% of people probably won't notice that, but it's the fact still stands that if they had got that authentically done, the story in that would have been a lot more consistent through all the footage than suddenly seeing some people that I recognised that hadn't been in any of the other footage, which I appreciate for what they need to communicate. It probably does the job, but like you say, had they got out a photo shoot done and a video created for that, that would be probably 10-20 times more effective than me seeing some random people I recognise.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it is, that's the key thing. We're using professional agencies such as us, professional photographers and videographers, because everything that they do, us included as an agency, is considered. It's not, we're not just kind of happy snapping, if you like. Let's just take a few images of some guy, like for a manufacturing business, like his workstation, or her workstation, depending.
Or their workstation.
So you don't just like rock up and just take a few pics and that's that. Everything should be considered. Why are you taking that photograph? Right from the get-go. And what are you trying to achieve with that photograph? So it's looking at it from a marketing perspective and also from a brand perspective, that I need to create an image that is going to represent my business in the right way, that's going to build trust, and like you said, maybe tell a story as well. And everything that when you talk to the agency, they'll consider all those facts, and it will be linked to some form of marketing, some campaign of some sort. It's not to say that you can't commission your own photographers as well. You can.
Of course not.
We are great believers that if you're trying to, especially if you're working on a campaign, that route to getting the photography done should be done through your agency. So, they're considering the marketing and the channels and what type of media it's going to go out on. And so they'll then, work out what that storyboard for that video shoot or that photography shoot needs to be. And as we often do to aid the photographer, quite often we'll scamp out, compositions and even make notes, written notes to talk to the photographer or videographer to try and get our thoughts across, and all of which has been already spoken to the client about, so they're 100% on board with what we're trying to achieve. And then the photographer and videographer have got that vision of what we're trying to do. So, but as I said, I mean, it's not to say that, if you've been working with a brand working for an agency for quite some time, and you're used to kind of, the way that they're art directing the photography and things like that, the videography. It's not to say that you couldn't do that yourself,
No.
but just make sure that it's considered with whatever campaign or, the end result that you're trying to achieve.
100%.
And, having a long sit down with a videographer and photographer to say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is the prior stuff that has been created.
Yeah.
I want it done in a very similar way, or it might be mixing it up completely. If you want to, you've got a new product that needs a completely new look and feel, let's say, I need it to look like this kind of style. And that's where, visual mood boards come in.
Yeah.
And this is where, we will use stock photography to show to a client.
Sure.
Quite often ahead of a video or photography shoot, to show a visual style of where we think they should be in terms of brand positioning.
Agreed.
So that's where stock content in terms of video photography can be really useful, especially for us, to show photographer or videographer a direction. And equally, a client could do the same if the budget didn't allow for art direction, storyboarding for a video. But so not to say that don't use an agency, but you definitely get a better job, especially on a campaign, because it's linked directly back to the marketing and where and the channels that it needs to go out on.
That's a good point. Yeah, I don't think it's like we said before. I don't think it's so much kiboshing things like AI and stock and saying they're, satanic. Don't touch them. Don't use them. I don't think it's so much that. It's more of when you do use them, make sure you're picking them for the right reason and make sure the foundation is still there. So, like you say, stock imagery. Yes, there's thousands, millions of images out there on the internet that are stock, that some of which obviously are going to be more appropriate than others, some of which are going to be very close to what you need, but they're still not unique to you.
No.
So if they can help set a style, I completely agree, and that's a really good point with some clients where you say to them, this is the kind of thing I think you need on your website, or this is the kind of thing I think you need on a social media asset, or I can visualize this working really well in an ad in the following way. Sometimes they can't really understand that fully. They can't really get what you're saying. So the two options are you try and get them to convince them to do a photo shoot straight away, which is very difficult because they can't vision what you're saying. They can't sort of see that in their eyes of like, how does that going to look and how's that going to work? So therefore having those stock imagery and obviously AI these days to be able to create something that can sort of compose something in advance with the style that you're trying to achieve can really help communicate to that client, this is what we're trying to look and feel for you. Do you understand what that's going to look like? And as soon as you send that to them, sometimes it's like instant. It's like, yeah, okay, I see exactly what you're trying to do. And then that vision's unlocked, and then that creative campaign becomes easier to kind of follow forward. And then the photo shoot and the structure of that photo shoot is much more transparent from both sides because they understand what we're trying to get out of that. And I think that is a really good point with stock imagery. That's where it can help. But again, that's where AI, I suppose, although there's several negatives which we'll touch on shortly, there are some real positives to AI, and I think that is one of them, is being able to, if you can manipulate it in the right way, to get that style nailed, to then send to the client and say, this is exactly the kind of thing we want to create for you. This isn't what we want to use right now. I mean, I've just done a web visual recently for a client, or a mock-up of a homepage, and I had absolutely no imagery. So I had to use AI to try and generate the kind of imagery I wanted them to take and use it on the homepage visual to try and show them this is the kind of thing we need from you. It's not the long-term plan. It's not what I want to use for you ongoing, because there's nobody in there that's actually works for you, and it's not authentic. But what it did communicate to them was this is the kind of thing we need to be trying to aspire to. And I think that is a real benefit of AI, whereas stock, again, as you know, as well as I do, sometimes you can spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours looking through stock, trying to find something that's close to the fit, but it's not quite there. And I think that's where the AI manipulation does help, because you can say, no, I don't want that in that position. I don't want that person at the background. I want them brought forward, and I want this in the background. And I think from a composition point of view, it's very beneficial, because you can send that to a client.
It is. I mean, but sometimes, I mean, the AI, I mean, we're going to come on to that next, but there is a danger sometimes that clients will, like, they'll look at an AI image and they might even want to use that AI image, even though we've done it intentionally as
Yeah,
an
because it's so
initial
believable. They're
design,
like, oh yeah,
and then they might say,
yeah,
but I'd like to use it or whatever. Or conversely, they might say, why is that? They're wearing a blue t-shirt.
yeah,
We wouldn't wear blue, and they're
yeah,
fixating then on the detail of the imagery and
sure.
less so on the overall design.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, I can remember the days when, you used to literally just scamp everything out and wireframe and sketch things just in black and white. Don't know what that ping was.
Probably my
um,
MacBook. Sorry.
so yeah, and it's just, you do things in black and white, and even when we're doing logo designs and things like that,
Yeah.
we always present it, to a client just in black and white, because sometimes we've noticed that, clients will fixate on colors and typefaces and things. Why is it like that? And so yeah, we try and do it in a way where, they're not fixating on certain elements. So
Yeah.
that is one of the dangers of presenting a client with especially like a homepage visual, that they could potentially fixate on the detail of the imagery,
Yeah, that's true.
and less so on the overarching design and what we're trying to portray.
Yeah, that is true. When it gets too and that's the problem with AI, is quite accurate to life in terms of how it creates the image rather than it looking like a mock-up or a scamp. So I think sometimes, yeah, there is that risk of crossover between when you're using a stock image. They could go, oh, why's that woman got blonde hair, or why is she smiling in that way?
Yeah.
We wouldn't smile like that. And I think that's for us to try and communicate to them, which we do regularly, but it's not always easy, in saying that this is very much a lifestyle image, or this is very much a concept of what we're trying to achieve with you, with the photo shoot, with what we want to get out of it, not specifically this image and not everything in that image that's
Yeah.
relevant to you.
Yeah.
And I think that, yeah, that is a really good point. I mean, again, I've been playing around with sort of Gemini and other image tools and things like that,
Yeah.
and it's getting much, much better at swapping clothes, and scarily good at swapping faces and impressions and scenes and things like that. It's very good. But again, it's never going to replace the creative element of the photography, like you've said, when with princess shoots or things you've done in the past where you've had that very classic approach to the photography. The things that are in there are the awareness, the experience from that photographer, the creative concepts, the creativity that's creating that image, that regardless of how old it is, a good image is still striking and it's still going to catch people. And I
Yeah.
think when we're generating imagery or we're not experienced in what we're trying to achieve from it, the risk is that a client could go in and say, create me an image for this or create me an image for that with AI, and the output, they don't really qualify it in the same way we would. So it's acceptable for them. So they'll use it and they'll put it on social media, and it will look like 100 other brands have used.
Yeah.
That qualification process is not there because the experience and the knowledge and the awareness is not there. So it's no fault of theirs to not know what they don't know. But at the same time, if they came to us or an agency or somebody that's really passionate about the look and feel of how they're portrayed, they would be looking at those things, and they would be saying, look, we're not saying you can't use AI, we're not saying you can't use stock, but if you do use those things, it has to adhere to what we're trying to achieve for you. And I think that's, for me, that's the bottom line. And when we see so many things on social media these days, or an influx in the last year of AI imagery, I think that's what's lacking, is that fundamental sort of foundational understanding of why that image is right for them.
Yeah.
And just, oh, it's done now, it's generated, it'll do, let's get it out, which we've done a podcast on already. What the acceptable elements and what is okay and what is
what is
allowed.
good enough design.
Exactly. So I think, yeah, in that logic, people are like, that's good enough of an image, that's good enough for us to send out, let's get it out. And there may be merit to that, but if you're not getting any engagement on it, you're not getting any clicks, what really is that doing for the brand?
Well, I think, a lot of that, the photographers and videographers are artists.
Yes.
Like we have a vision as designers and what we want to try and portray for the brands that we work with. But equally, you know, we spent years now working with various different photographers and videographers, and we've got like a set bank of core people that we use
Yeah.
because they're damn good at what they do.
Yeah.
And two key things that I really love about the people that we use is lighting. Their lighting skills are exceptional. So they understand, like, you know, how to light a scene.
Which
and
makes a huge difference. Yeah.
and on photography, I mean, I've worked with, you know, like the likes of Mike Evans, world-renowned photographer. Did a lot of work for Princess Yachts, and he's done work for numerous other brands for us, most recently like Arc Marine and people
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And his lighting skills are just exceptional. You know, he'll spend sometimes hours lighting a specific product just to get it absolutely bang on.
Yeah.
And then he'll take several photographs, you know, once the lighting's all set up. But, you know, the composition as well is the other key thing that I think that really good photographers and videographers bring to the party.
Yeah.
That they understand great composition.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think can't be overlooked when, even when you're, you know, we touched on, excuse me, AI.
Yeah.
That's something that unless you feed it with correct information
Agreed.
or a scamp of composition of how you want something,
Yeah.
it's not going to produce what you want.
100%.
And, you know, all too often I look through my social feed and I think it's a nice image, but the composition is shocking. The lighting's shocking.
Yeah.
And it might be AI generated or it might be stock even.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like a properly composed, well-constructed piece of art,
No.
you know? And I
very
think
true.
that's where I think the skills of these individuals, these
I agree.
photographers and videographers,
I agree.
you know, they've been doing it for sometimes decades. You know, we use the really good media company on videography, sorry, for a lot of our clients. And again, their composition, their lighting skills are amazing, you know, and it shows the finished product just looks fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, it could be, you know, some of the stuff they've done could be, you know, on film, you know, it's amazing. So, you know, that
They're not
reflects...
getting their iPhone torches out, are they, and holding them on each other? No.
I mean, iPhones, yeah, we can come on to that. But yeah, I mean, that whole side of things has definitely improved. And it helps, like, with the codecs as well. Like,
Yeah, it's a tool again, isn't
ProRes
it?
and stuff like that. You can do
Yeah.
a lot with that content now in terms of, you know, pulling back contrast and,
Yeah.
and
It's
exposures.
like you said, if you
and the
gave
like.
Mike Evans or really good media the iPhone, they could create some great footage with it. They know what they're doing. They know what they're trying to achieve. The tool is there to actually allow them to achieve it.
It is.
You're not going to create rubbish content, but I think the thing people miss, and I think what we're trying to establish here, is that obviously there's still a real foundation for that knowledge and awareness and understanding
Yeah.
of what that video needs to do and what that photo needs to do. And that's really prominent with AI because AI is so accessible to everyone. Anyone and their brother, their mum, their nan can go on and generate an image and feel like they're empowered because they've suddenly got this tool in front of them which allows them to create an image that they could never have created before.
Yeah.
But for me, like you've just said, it's like giving a 5-year-old child a really advanced piece of photography equipment and saying, go out and do a photo shoot for me. They're going to be able to go out and take that camera. They can probably work out how to press the button on it once you teach them it. It's probably going to take you, for a 5-year-old, half an hour to an hour to understand how to press a button. And they'll go around and maybe at some point they accidentally take a nice photo, you know? They've gone around with the camera, they've shot things,
Yeah.
but they're not aware of what they're shooting. They don't have any objective in mind and they don't really know what they're trying to get out of the end of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the pitfall that I see brands falling into with AI in particular, is this empowerment of, you've got this tool now here, everyone can use it. You don't need a photographer, you don't need a branding agency. Just type in what you want and it will create the image for you. And obviously, like you've just said, they've got no ability to determine really whether that's good or bad, other than it looks all right. I don't know, it's fake, it looks like it's a real image, that'll do. And you can't explicitly blame them for that because they don't know any different. But I think the problem lies, like you say, is what effect does that have long term, because you're creating things without the awareness and the skill and the foundational knowledge of what a photograph should be or contain. and just throwing it out there. And I
Yeah.
think that, for me, that's the risk with AI, because we've used AI and we use it constantly in things like Photoshop, and we enhance imagery with it, we upscale, but we know what the objective we want to achieve is before we do that.
Yeah.
And it becomes a tool for us, and sometimes it's very, very effective. It's very time saving. It's making things happen that we could never have done in an hour before. It would have taken us half a day or a day. So there's real benefits to that side of it.
Definitely.
But there's real negatives to the fact that people can just throw a prompt in and think that's sufficient, that's enough, and they're not considering all the detrimental effects that they're missing from not having that awareness, not having that knowledge.
Yeah.
And still, like you say, somebody that's really experienced, whether that's really good media, Mike Evans, or any other photographer, that they could go out with a fairly old camera and still take an absolutely blinding photo because they know what they're trying to look for.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is definitely at risk with the AI movement and imagery.
It is. I mean, the other thing is, with AI, obviously it's generating imagery from using content that's already out there.
100%.
So, scarily, I think in 10 years' time, how much fake imagery will be out there that's been generated by other fake imagery.
Incestuous imagery, yeah.
Will these systems be able to determine what was once real?
That's a
what's
thought, isn't it?
now,
Yeah.
like being generated from more
It's
and
a really
more
good point.
artificial images.
Yeah, that is a really good point and a really good risk, because again, the human creativity, the human mind is always looking for the next thing, or they're trying to push boundaries, or they're trying to do things that haven't been done before. But they've got that fundamental awareness of, like you say, with a photographer like Mike Evans, although we're praising Mike constantly in this podcast, but that vision of how could we do that a bit differently, or how could I frame that subject a bit differently, how could this product look a bit different. I've seen some other people doing some quite creative things. Maybe we could change that and move that around. I think, as you say, the risk with AI is it's always feeding off what's been and what other people have done and what it's done.
Yeah.
And it's a risk regurgitating the same cyclic processes without really knowing it's doing it.
Yeah.
And it's creating something it thinks is fresh, and actually it's either wildly wrong because it's gone too far down the wildcard route, or it's just repeating what's been done before.
Yeah.
And actually a client said to me really interestingly, when I'm waiting for the time when I see myself on an AI image, and I thought that's a really interesting point, because essentially it's feeding off constant photos of faces and people and imagery. There's only going to be a matter of time before it creates a face that looks exactly like yours,
Yeah.
because it's going to have all the data in there. Eventually it's going to randomize a face which literally looks like your face.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting.
But I mean, Channel 4 did a documentary very recently about AI and how it's going to impact us over the year,
Yeah, I
or the
watched
coming
that. It was
years.
good. Yeah.
And even the presenter, they didn't reveal this to the very end, but even the presenter presenting the entire documentary was completely AI generated. And you couldn't tell. I mean, the voice, the imagery, it just, it's scary, really.
Yeah, mind blowing.
So, it does have a place, like you've touched on.
Yeah.
But I think, we use it, like you said, as a tool.
Yeah.
And we're not using it like literally for everything, because, we do still genuinely believe that brands, benefit wholeheartedly from having very authentic human content or human generated content, even featuring humans.
Yeah.
Conversely, though, I saw a music video, this artist I follow online, coming up in my social feed, and she's now set a style for her music videos, and it's very sort of grey backgrounds with humans wearing very odd shaped hats, and almost looks like a scene from like the Return of the Jedi, and those weird characters.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like that, but they're wearing all sorts of weird, loud costumes and things like that. And she's obviously spent, and there is a video out there as well of the kind of her making some of the videos and putting in all the prompts. And there's a lot of prompts in there, but the videos that she's generated is set its own style. So she's not actually filming real people, but obviously she's creating people in her AI videos, her music videos,
Yeah.
And she's done it in such a way to create a very unique style. And sometimes, like these, they're human bodies, and sometimes they've got animal heads and things like that. So that's where I can see the total use of AI, especially in videography, having its own place. And I think
Interesting.
it's really, really good. I mean, the quality of it's amazing. But conversely, you've then got the likes of, well, we're now, as you can probably tell from above, it's Christmas time, and we've just had like an onslaught of hate, basically, towards Coca-Cola for creating a totally AI generated
Yeah.
Christmas video. So, for a brand like Coca-Cola that's trying to come across as though they are a brand of the people, of humans, right? To generate something that's not being even probably art directed maybe by a human. I
No.
don't know.
That's the
But
trouble. I think people don't know. They hear AI and they jump on. So what I was going to say is, do you think that's warranted, or do you think it's a resistance from humans again, just thinking, hold on, this is 100% AI. We don't like where this is going, and they throw that defense against it purely because of that?
no,
Or
I
is
don't.
you don't?
No, I think because, I mean, I saw a video recently, actually, there's a podcast, and if I can find it, I'll put it in the comments. But this guy was talking about like AI and about the Coca-Cola video in particular, and the hate that's been directed towards it, because it's meant to be a human-centric brand, and yet it's just not got any humans in it at all. And this is harking back to, I guess, the nostalgic days of the holidays are coming and all that lot, with shot with real people and real vehicles and the like.
Yeah.
So I get that things have changed, but I think
Yeah.
they're still trying to hold on to the humanizing of the brand of Coca-Cola.
Okay.
Anyway, conversely, he was talking about most recently the new Apple TV ident.
Of course, we
And
don't like Apple, do we?
no, we
No.
don't know. No, really love it. And yeah, this is a rotating sort of opaque glass Apple
Yeah,
logo
the new styles
that
they've got,
that
yeah.
turns into. It's got sort of different color hues as it rotates, and this was generated totally by a videographer in a studio using real colored glass, and frame by frame shot this rotating Apple logo, and it's completely generated by a human. And I think that was such a cool move by Apple to say, look, we're a human centric brand, we value people, right? So we're going to create something that, although a lot of their content might have CGI in it,
And
with
the whole
various
Apple
different,
Intelligence thing that they're doing, yeah.
with various different series and the like, but they are still fundamentally saying that we want to, commit to humans to come up with a concept for this thing,
Yeah.
use humans to create the content, to put onto our platforms, to put out there into the world for humans. And
Yeah.
I think that was just a genius move. So yeah, the podcast, as I say, I'll dig out the link and see if I can put it in the comments. But
Yeah.
I think there's definitely a place for it, and I think this year Coca-Cola got it wrong personally.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to think like me. So
No, that's the thing. It's interesting to almost notice, like we've said with clients, who's even identified it as AI, because we assume everyone knows and everyone sees it, and because we're in that and we're looking for that. But it is fascinating to understand the stats, I think, from our point of view as an agency, to know how many people do recognize things as AI, because I've quite often written things off that I've done and said, you can't use this permanently, we can't use that, this is good. And actually, clients and people have sort of said, well, I didn't know that was AI generated, or I thought it was a photograph. And,
yeah.
and I think, actually, yeah, if I hadn't told you, I don't know that you would have known.
No.
So it's right interesting that I can see that, but then I know because I generated it, and I'm also seeing imagery all the time, and I'm almost assessing it to see whether I can qualify if it's AI. But then in my own mind, I'm thinking, am I then thinking less of it because I think it's AI? just purely because I know that there's probably the assumption there that that's skipped a process of the human intervention. Like we've said, some of the best images I've seen out there, so on sites like Mid-Journey, things like that, there's some insanely good images on there, which 20 years ago you'd have to be a top end CGI expert or a creative expert to be able to even touch anything like that. And they're generating it now with prompts. But what we aren't seeing is the effort that's gone into those prompts, much like we face sometimes when we create a logo for a client, or we send a logo to them and they go, oh, that's all right, yeah, it looks like one I saw on Shutterstock, or it looks like one, and you say, well, actually no, it doesn't look anything like one you've seen on Shutterstock, because we've gone through this process, we've created it from this, we've drawn this up, it's evolved from that. And then suddenly they go, oh yeah, I see what you mean, actually that's really nice. But when they first saw it, they didn't know what they were seeing. And I think that's the risk with AI, is everyone just coins all the imagery, all the photography, all the videos. Oh, it's been AI'd, but no one actually knows the depth at what something's been AI'd. Somebody could still have spent a week creating that video and playing around with it, filtering it, adding their own elements to it. It's just been very heavily influenced by AI. And I think that is a risk we're going to fall down, is like yourself, I would say, if something was told to me as this is completely AI generated, I'd immediately be willing to kind of take a bit of a step back and think, hold on, I don't really want to connect to this too much, because there's not really much human involvement in it. So I've not got much that I can relate to. It's a robot that's made this. I'm not really thinking they know really what I want to see and what I like. But obviously, if I knew that actually, no, it was just a tool, like we were discussing earlier, and there's been a human concept behind this, much like you said about that person using it for a music video. We saw it the other day for a brand that had created a very emotional piece-to-camera videos, and they'd applied a style on top of that, which was generated by AI, which didn't really detract from the overall message of it, which was what the person was thinking and what the person wanted to communicate. So I think there is a place for that, where the AI is just a cap on top. It's just the icing on the cake for that message. But it's when the AI becomes the message and it creates the message, I think, which is probably what you're saying with Coca-Cola, where it risks losing that audience. Really interestingly, we spoke about like Norton Antivirus had ran a whole load of fully AI generated campaigns. And like you said to me at the time, maybe they, and I'm sure they did, maybe they had that conversation internally. They decided, we are a tech first business. We want to try and look like we're embracing this.
Well, that's why I think they did it. I mean, because they are tech-led based business. And it makes sense that if you're in the tech space, you're going to use tech to, promote
completely get that.
Your product or service.
I get that.
I kind of get that. I think
So
where I've got a problem, I think, which I'll probably get over in time, is when AI features humans. And I think it'd be, you think of all the models and stuff that, presenters and all that potentially could lose work. And I think if it's predominantly about a human in whatever way telling a story, then I think it will be better to use a human in that content, even if it's interspersed with some AI B-roll stuff or whatever it might be. I think if it's about humans, it should genuinely feature humans.
It's really interesting. There's probably a whole different podcast we could do on that, because that's a whole, almost like a emotional attachment from us as humans to what we're seeing, and a disliking of mistrust, like we said before. We don't like feeling like what we're looking at is trying to deceive us from a branding, marketing, life point of view. You don't want to see something and think that person's pretending to be a human, but they aren't. And I think that's what your grievance is with.
It is
that fact of, it's not, I agree with you, it's a shame to replace people's jobs. Why do we need to do that if they can do that better and more effectively, and probably with a bit of a spin, like we said earlier, the creative spin. There's still a lot of creativity in the acting industry. So I think where you've got an actor, they will put spins on things, and some of the most iconic films have been created because that person's put a spin on it. And would AI put that spin on it in that same way and have that nuance? And probably not.
If it was prompted, it might.
If it was prompted, it might, but then the person prompting it would have to know to, and then by the time they've done all that, like you said, you could have just had a real human and had that authentic connection.
I wonder if they can put in like a prompt, like, during this scene, can you ad lib?
Yeah.
You know, part
Just
way through.
Yeah, free reign. Yeah, you've reminded me actually of a really interesting episode. There's a Black Mirror episode about that where they replay. I think it's a 1920s film. It's a really good episode actually of Black Mirror, and they try and modernize an old film by replaying it and putting new actors in to replace the older actors, and they try and reenact it. But in that light, it all goes wrong, obviously, and then the actors that are essentially AI actors start having access to other thoughts from the actual actors, and they start thinking for themselves. So they start breaking away from the scene and questioning, why have I got to go and now play the piano in this scene? I don't want to go and play the piano. I want to go and get a drink. But this scene's telling me I've got to play the piano. So it's a really interesting concept, because obviously from what you're saying, like, they essentially, what that AI prompt has been given, you've got to do this and you've got to do that. But a real actor or an actress would be thinking, actually, I might do this now, or I might go off and ad-lib a bit. And I think that beauty of that film, which is what that episode was trying to communicate, came about from the imperfections, from the actors doing things that they thought were a bit quirky, which stood out for the viewers. Whereas if they'd done it completely by the book constantly, it would just be a very formulaic, very predictable film. I thought it was really interesting actually, but from the point you just made, it does communicate that. I think that's what they were trying to get through, that if you do just let it do its thing, it's obviously going to create quite predictable outcomes. And I think the creative industry, certainly from video, from photography, the bit that's going to stand out is the things that people are doing that are different. People haven't kept seeing constantly on social media, and they're not used to seeing all the time. That statement that we usually share internally from an ad we've seen, that's like, blimey, that took us back. It's because they've thought about it and they've done something different. And I think that's the risk of AI. And like you say, there's the severe brand damage that, say, Coca-Cola have experienced. I don't think Norton will experience it, but it's putting all their eggs in that basket to try and say to people, we're happy to do this. Recently, I think I mentioned to you, like, the Call of Duty franchise, 22 years of Call of Duty games. This year was the first year they got absolutely diabolical ratings. And the majority of the underlying reason was because they'd used AI in it, and they felt that people had cheated. They hadn't fully produced bits they should have produced by humans. And that's a really interesting point, because it feeds off what you've said about, is that something people really aren't ready for and they're not liking at the moment, and it could have a real detrimental impact on a brand.
Well, I think also, I mean, we harked on, at the beginning of the podcast, was about authenticity. And sometimes, like, you look at, especially like films and things, certain films are going to have CGI in it, especially if they're sci-fi films and the like. So you expect to see it. But I think when you've got, people walking out in the countryside and things like that, sometimes, you can tell that, how authentic it is by it looks raw and doesn't look too polished. I think sometimes you see a lot of AI content that, obviously it's drawing its information from other content, and it's looking for sort of the most glossy, it's polished. What I keep seeing, especially in photography, the most highly polished, ultra realistic kind of image.
Very, very, very true.
That ends up looking not realistic because it's just insanely polished.
It's funny you should say that, because Gemini 2.5, the Google system, that had loads of controversy around how over realistic the imagery was looking, and Gemini 3 they've just released has actually had an update put into it to try and make things look less realistic, because so many people are complaining that it looks fake almost, because it's too polished. Nothing's that polished in the real world. So ironically, the latest update, I think probably other AI systems have done the same, is to actually say to it, don't make it overly polished, give it some imperfections, make some things a bit rustic, because people don't want to see that. And like you said, they immediately see it and think that's not real. It looks too perfect, and they completely disengage with it. And it is it's a real consideration to make, I think.
So I mean, AI definitely has its place, and as we use it as a tool really to enhance things. We don't use it verbatim.
Like you said, with a client like Art Marine, for example, where they've got the difficulty of going out and taking those imagery, getting a photographer out there, the legislation, the sign off, the reality of getting a good shot.
Just to put you guys in the picture, Art Marine, they produce artificial reefs, and sometimes these artificial reefs, they have like an eco-friendly marinecrete that they've manufactured, and to create these queues with holes in, and they create artificial reefs sometimes out in like offshore wind farms.
Yeah.
So logistically, to train somebody, because you have to have like special licenses to get anywhere near a wind farm, photographers need to be trained and the like. So it's then, well, if we can't get a photographer there, how do we portray these reef cubes under the ocean at the foot of a wind turbine?
Yeah.
So the logistics of trying to get that done is just
Extremely complex.
insanely difficult. So that's where CGI or AI imagery would come in really useful.
Agreed.
So it definitely has its place, yeah.
We have used it for those things.
We have, yeah.
And it has been really beneficial. And also, like you say, if we're the art director, which we quite often are, or the creative director, it's then portraying that onto a CGI expert or a CGI designer to then understand what we're trying to achieve, which is another process. Whereas I guess the benefit with AI is you can manipulate that engine directly and try and get it to output exactly what you're looking for. And actually, to date, we've got some really good results using it for that, because it will listen to exactly what you want. Providing you steer it, it's got the sort of enough of an insight, enough of a foresight to kind of create what you're looking for, and also add a bit of a flair to it because it refers to other styles. As long as you give it that guidance, it refers to other styles that I've done a similar thing. Whereas again, I think that would be a lot more difficult to convey that to, say, a CGI artist, where they might have their own ideas, or they might have a perception of what we're trying to achieve, and it goes through several stages and several iterations. So I think there is definitely a benefit there for that as well.
Sure. Videography definitely matters. I mean, it is the fastest growing UK ad format. Just reading my bit of paper here.
From the old facts online, yeah.
Fastest growing UK ad format, expected 13 billion by 2025.
Wow.
So it's pretty insane, really. So
that's scary.
Yeah, it's another reason why videography is really important. And we do it for a lot of our clients, and quite often a lot of the shoots that we do, we provide the content for.
Yeah.
And so we'll construct a video shoot in a way that is maybe 2 or 3 minute promotional film, let's say, but then there's a lot of additional content, B-roll stuff, and even face the camera type footage as well, where we can then utilize in the next 12 months or even 2 years, 3 years even. So a client might be paying, well, anywhere between, let's say, 5 to 15 grand, depending on the complexity of the shoot. But again, like the photography that we spoke about earlier, they're getting a year, 2, 3, 4 years worth of content because of the way we've constructed it.
Yeah.
And it still comes back to how we're going to market their business. This is, again, another reason why I plug for agencies and why they're important, because you're linking back to the marketing all the time.
Yeah.
And as I say, we construct a video shoot in a way that we're going to give you a lot of content for your money.
Yeah.
So it's a definite investment and not to be seen as a cost.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the overarching message, is that importance of understanding what it's for and not just ticking a box, I think. And that's the overarching kind of message I would give to any client is just don't underestimate the value of the photography and of the videography that you're putting out. Make sure you cater for different platforms, different environments, different uses. Like you say, short form content, stories we often run for clients on different platforms, smaller snippets. They would be fine to be less polished and more authentic looking. So something you've done yourself or something you filmed, that's resonating with that audience because it feels very trustworthy, because they see you as just filming that when you felt like filming it and when you want to say that thing, when you want to communicate that thing. And I think that's what that's what's really important with that. And like you've said, in a world of over polish and over created imagery, it is probably kind of really important to communicate to someone, this isn't fake, this isn't AI, this is me talking to a camera saying what I think to you, person to person. So I think, there's all those things that are really important to consider when you're getting any imagery done.
No,
or
that's
any
true.
video.
It's a good point. I mean, we do the polished sort of, promotional videos, but especially in a social feed, you want to kind of cut and splice in amongst your promotional branded content. You really do want to intersperse that with, real, it might be your iPhone, just a day in the life of kind of thing, which again comes across as very authentic and humanizes your brand.
100%.
So
I
it's
think
not to say everything has to be, through an agency or
No,
through
not at all.
a videographer or
No.
photographer.
No.
We're not saying that at all, but obviously the branded stuff, the key bits of information that you want to get across to help sell the story of your brand, really, that's where you really need the help of an agency and professionals to do that. But in amongst all that, definitely take your own content, take your own photos, and put that on your social feed. It definitely helps. It humanizes the brand.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not, as you say, we're not anti-technology, anti-AI by any means. Like we will keep using those services ourselves and keep pushing them forward and keep trying to use, as much as is available that we feel is acceptable of the quality that we want to output for that client. So I think as long as that quality is met and the output is good enough to what we hope it to be, then, tools like AI and like other options are only going to grow more and more, and we're going to embrace them, and definitely not going to tell people not to use them and to say, oh well, you've cheated, you've used AI. But I think the fundamentals, like we've said several times now, are still really key. So you've got to make sure that whatever output you do create is for the right reasons, and the audience has been considered, and the content's been considered, and the context of what you're putting out has been considered. I think if all those things are there, and you can save $5,000 on a photo shoot or a video shoot by using AI to create all those things, then that might be where we're at in 5 years, and great if that is what's happening for that business. But ultimately, I think the fundamentals still stand, that in order to get to that point, we still need to be basing everything on why are we creating these images, who are they for, what do they need to communicate, are they as good as a real photographer, are they as good as getting a real video shot. And if, obviously, like you said, with this person that you've been following, if there's a style they've set and it's consistent and AI is keeping that consistency, arguably it's great. That's a real benefit to them. They're saving a lot of money, but the communication is still...
But I don't know if they are, because, I mean, in order to write all the prompts, and, as we found, sometimes to get the little nuances, the bits just absolutely perfect, it can take...
You're right.
numerous iterations to try and get that right. So to create like a music video, what's that, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, something like that, the amount of work that's going to need to go into that. If you monetize that time, okay, in this instance, I mean, she set a style where she's purposely not,
changing it too much.
Although they're human-like characters, they're not humans. So she set a style to do that. But, would she be better off if it was humans? Cost-wise, in terms of monetary value, you're better off actually organising a video shoot. Yes, probably. The amount of time it would have taken her, but because she's purposely gone for a completely unique look.
Exactly. Once you've trained it to do that style, I think that's what I've seen people doing. Once you've got a style, you can start seeing the overlap of benefits versus a human that needs to keep creating the style, which needs new assets, new drawings. Once that system is creating that style for you and able to animate it and fully understands it, it's almost like it's safeguarding the fact that that model or that AI agent is only going to do that output. So you've got that trust in it, whereas again a human can actually make a mistake on something like that because it's a very unique creative execution. There could be something they deviate from. So I say there's benefits to both, but I think the fundamental still needs to be there, that you can't just let AI generate that whole video for you. You'd still need to feed it with the concept, the content, the structure, everything to make that video worth watching.
Yeah.
I think the AI bit's just the icing on the cake.
But it's also, I mean, fundamentally, it comes down to your brand ethics. If you want your business to be very human centric and to, you know, have all your employees as humans, because some businesses are already changing to AI
Yeah, a
and
lot.
robotic
Yeah, certainly
systems.
depending on the industry. Yeah.
So if your brand values are that you want to employ humans, I don't know for how long for, but certainly in the foreseeable future, then surely your content should also be generated by humans and feature humans if it's
Yeah,
about
agreed.
humans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So going back to the whole Coca-Cola thing as well. So I definitely think as a brand you need to assess where you're at on that.
Yeah, and how quickly we
Spectrum.
deviate from that. So I think jumping on trends, like we said, is the bigger risk. And like we mentioned before, things like animations, like Wallace and Gromit. I mean, that's so engaging because there's a human that's actually put time and effort in there, or many humans, to create that immersive, creative experience. And I think that adds.
Wallace not real.
No, I only found that out last
What?
week, but no, he's not. No. Yeah, no, it blew my mind. But yeah, that level of animation and effort and engagement, I think, is what makes the watching it that more enjoyable. Whereas if somebody told me, oh, it's been completely AI'd now, or it's all CGI, it's just animation, it's okay. I still don't have any idea the depth of knowledge or effort that's needed to do that, and there's probably still a lot that's going to be needed to do that. And they've embraced modern technologies. They've got really nice backgrounds in there now and really nice computer assisted animation, which they've come on from a leap from where they obviously the first ones, which look so old now but still so great.
Why are so old?
I know they look. I watched some the other day.
Older than me, you mean?
Not quite. But I think it's that fact that that there's that blood and sweat and tears gone into that from a human that makes that far more enjoyable. It's almost you appreciate it more.
Yeah.
It's just the work is appreciated in what you're seeing.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like you say, it may be a generational thing.
It might be. Yeah.
That's
true.
in like my daughter's 15. I mean, by the time like she might have kids, they might see all their content being AI generated, and it might be the norm. But for me, I'd much sooner stick with.
I think we have a duty, don't we, sometimes, because we know what it was like as well. We know where the value is to be, if we are in those generations, to be mindful and protective of that. Because I think if you've never seen that, how do you know what you're missing? Because you can't really criticize a generation of people that haven't seen the value in the previous phases, because we were too, quick to just let them embrace the new ones without actually being mindful of what's potentially going to be lost. So I think that definitely applies with the video and photography elements of just being careful that we maintain that foundation of what we think is still really important.
We still brainstorm. So we have a campaign, we sit down as a team, and it doesn't matter who's in the team. It could be marketing department or digital or design or whatever. It doesn't matter who it is. That we brainstorm and we come up with ideas. And I think that whole process as well, I genuinely love that process. So, to not have that and that brainstorming thing, unless I guess, one computer system talking to another, maybe let's brainstorm.
Maybe. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, we've seen that.
What concepts can you come up with?
Yeah.
Well, I've come up with these.
Yeah, I know. That is pretty crazy. Yeah, that could
so
be
I don't know. So I like that human process of brainstorming and chatting through concepts. Really. Yeah. That level of refinement.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, I think so that's kind of pretty much discussed all different areas. I think of imagery and videography and where we feel the important elements are. And the things to be a little bit cautious of are, and obviously we could be having this podcast in a couple of years and maybe have a completely different impression of what we've all just said.
Well, we will. We'll do another one in a couple of years and just see where we're at then.
That'll be really interesting. But yeah, thanks for sticking with us and watching. Hopefully it's been useful, some of the things we've covered. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
Yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks guys. Cheers.